going to be our round 4 matches. We are ready to head over to the stage and find out who is going to be our next round opponent. And it is going to be Ben Grissmer going up against Shohei Kimura.
Ben Grissmer in North America and Shohei in Japan. Ben is really known for some of his crazier strategies like Shedinja, as he has performed very well with throughout many tournaments, through many different Pokemon games. And there it is right there, a very spicy team that Ben has brought here to London on day 1. But Shohei with a more consistent team, but as a Japanese player, those Japan national tournaments are best of 1. So there's often more room for more let's say, varied strategies. So maybe Shohei has more experience against teams that like Ben has here today.
It's time to get started. First match heading into round 4. The Zacian on the field to start next to this Kyogre double restricted lead up against the Sableye and the Kyurem.
Kyurem White is a Pokemon that can be an absolute nightmare if you are not prepared for it. A Pokemon like the Kyogre there definitely is safer than the Groudon, as we've seen in many different times. Groudon cannot face well against the Kyurem White there. So a very consistent lead out of Shohei with Kyogre and Zacian. What you have to worry about is the Sableye on Ben's end there. It's a prankster Pokemon. It's kind of a throwback to the olden days of VGC compared to these newer, Pokemon like Grimmsnarl and Whimsicott, other pranksters. The Sableye is very tricky, can use Quash to delay your opponent's attack to later on in the turn, which helps out Kyurem White being able to attack beforehand. And typically Kyurem White is seen as probably the predominant choice to Dynamax on Ben's team typically there, besides maybe the Urshifu. So I wonder if that is what Ben's going to go for.
I mean, the Dynamax to start, it's never going to be the Sableye, so here it is. Ben looking to apply this pressure right away, whereas Shohei opting instead to be swapping that Zacian out and bring in the Thundurus to try and help combat this in some sort of way.
Yeah, but Thundurus is not going to want to take a Max Hailstorm. That's kind of the worry you think of if you let this Kyurem start rolling, you're going to have problems.
We're talking about the tricks that Sableye likes to have up its sleeve, and Ally Switch is one of those as well, making sure that Shohei might not be able to attack exactly where he may want to, as Kyurem firing off this Max Quake. Nice for a little bit of damage, and definitely nice for this special defense boost, which fares very well typically against this Kyogre, especially with this Water Spout already taking damage. It's not going to do much, and with the special defense boost, going to do even less.
Yeah, that's definitely a smart play out of Ben, because you don't want to make any crazy turn 1 reads of game 1 in the round. You don't want to make a Max Hailstorm switch in, because with Zacian and Kyogre on the field at that point, it wasn't really safe to click Max Hailstorm. So now that you know the Zacian is out, you have to worry about the Thundurus. We've seen so many times so far today, Sierra, how strong Dynamax Thundurus can be with Max Airstream or just whatever to help out the team. But when you're facing a Kyurem, you might never be able to even get the attack thanks to Sableye.
Yeah, that Quash can definitely be pesky, and that Max Hailstorm you were talking about that it's not going to appreciate, well, that is the case. There's no chance here. That is going to be a quick one-hit KO, as well as a chance to reset this weather into the hill.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's going to take out, even though the Kyogre has less damage, now he has to go for the inaccurate attack.
That's going to do even less damage when that is a double miss. That was a turn full of disaster for Shohei.
So that turn 1 Max Quake is proving even more dividends later on, because you put Kyogre's health lower so that its Water Spout was not going to be effective. You have to risk the Origin Pulse, and Ben gets rewarded handsomely for that turn because he dodges all of the damage there, and Ben's just ready for his last turn of Dynamax at this point to try to just have another strong attack, maybe the Max Quake into the Zacian that switched in, or you want to go for another attack onto the already half-health Kyogre there. But this is very troubling for Shohei if he can't get his Kyogre to connect on his moves.
And it's disastrous as well with the Zacian out on the field, because it definitely doesn't appreciate the Max Quakes that this Kyurem has. Of course, it got to avoid that the first turn around with the swap in, but considering the Max Quakes did target into the Kyogre instead, it was kind of a swap that didn't really work out, and now it still has to be on the field to face the wrath of this last turn of Dynamax, and this Kyurem is definitely putting in that work.
Absolutely. Life Orb, Dynamax, Kyurem White is, as we said at the beginning of the set, it is a problem. If you don't have an answer for it, it will straight up steamroll your team.
All right, well, despite the special defense boost on Ben's side and despite the lowered health from the Kyogre, it is still going to be the Dynamax coming out. That's a way to definitely not miss these moves when you do have that Dynamax and a way to be applying that pressure. That way, protect onto the Zacian, no Quash, no Max Weak hitting into you, and that Quash hitting into that slot makes sure the Sableye not going to be doing much for this turn. Now, the Max Quake fired off. You can only imagine where this is going, and thanks to that Protect, not doing nearly as much devastating damage as it would have otherwise. Now, we're going to see another special defense boost, and that should fare pretty well into whatever this Kyogre wants to do. That Max Geyser not going to be doing extra damage because it is the hill now, but at least a chance to reset the weather.
The second boost!
It holds on because of that boost.
Yeah, that's crazy. And now that the hail is gone, you're actually not even able to knock it out, which it would have that turn. So I was questioning at the beginning of this turn when he Dynamaxed, hail was currently up. And a lot of Kyogre and Groudon players, they'll switch their restricted out to reset their weather, like the rain here in Kyogre's case. But Shohei deciding to not take that extra turn, not reveal his fourth Pokemon in the match, and just let Kyogre use his Dynamax while the hail is up, instead actually cost him twofold there. He didn't do enough damage because rain wasn't up, and then he didn't knock it out because he got rid of hail at the same time.
A tricky situation, that's for sure. And at this point, not wanting the Zacian to face the, ground attack Quash combination that Ben has available, just has to be swapping out into that Incineroar. Because of that, it won't get Quashed. Not that that would have mattered too much, but Incineroar is not going to appreciate the Earth Power any less. Super effective hit, another one-hit KO coming out, and Shohei down to his final two Pokemon at this point. This Kyogre is going to have to do a lot of work in this matchup. And, I mean, when a Max Geyser is used just to be finishing off the Sableye, that's a tough spot.
That is very difficult because you don't want... You have to knock it out right there. The Sableye's Quash is just being too problematic here, but wasting your second turn of Dynamax just to take care of a measly 10 hit points on a Sableye compared to the gigantic threat on the field, which has been the Kyurem White the entire game, is not the position that Shohei wants to be in. So now that he is down to his final two Pokemon, Ben has now just going to reveal his third Pokemon, right? It's been the Sableye and Kyurem White lead the entire match so far in game one. So if you bring in the Zacian here, you can try to find out the information on if you're faster or not. But instead, if you bring Shedinja, you think, hey, maybe Shohei doesn't have any attacks to get rid of my Shedinja.
I mean, you were talking, too, about Ben and just how utilized the Shedinja was for him, and now feeling confident and bring it out in this matchup. I mean, regardless of what's coming on in Ben's end, just the Pokemon advantage that Ben has at this point is still just astonishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then he's kind of bringing his ringer in the back in Shedinja, who is essentially Ben's partner Pokemon throughout his history in VGC. He's used it so many different times, and if you are not prepared for it, Shedinja is a Pokemon that it has 1 HP, right? But thanks to its ability, it can only take damage from super effective attacks. So if you do not have any moves that can hit it super effectively, you're not able to hit it at all, and that can be a really difficult, hurdle to overcome from players that don't prepare to face Shedinja.
You got to make sure there's always something in your back pocket just in case that bug is to come out. Behemoth Blade to start off the turn coming out from Shohei is going to finish off this Kyurem as the Max Geyser into the Wonder Guard is not going to do anything whatsoever. Now a big reveal. It's going to be the Assault Vest on this Pokemon. Going to take a bit of damage from this Poltergeist.
Yeah, the Poltergeist, it's a stronger attack if your opponent is holding a held item, excuse me. So it actually does more damage and reveals information. So it's pretty helpful for Ben there to now know for the rest of the set that it is a Assault Vest on the Kyurem. But now that Zacian has come in for Ben, you can try to stay safe. You don't want to get hit by the opposing Behemoth Blade, right? You got to try to figure out at this point how these two Zacians are trained, which one's typically faster, or if they're both as fast as they can be, and you have to risk the speed ties every turn. But Kyogre's kind of not very helpful for the rest of this match. You can't ignore it because you can always crit Origin Pulse or something like that while the rain is up, and that can be bad for Ben. So you can't fully ignore it, but definitely right now Shohei's Zacian's a bigger target, and that's why he protects it.
Yeah, protect to make sure you're not going to be hit in response. And sure enough, that's exactly where the Behemoth Blade from Ben's end was going to be coming out. Origin Pulse, of course, we already know how that story goes into the Wonder Guard, but we'll at least be able to connect this time around on to the Zacian, picking up a good, healthy amount of damage. Poltergeist in return back into this Kyogre, just to consistently be chipping away this damage and actually do enough this time around to be picking up the KO and put Shohei to his last and final Pokemon. And I don't think there's anything to hit.
No, at that point, this is what Shedinja does. It seems like 1 HP is just enough. You can have 1,000 HP or 1 HP. At this point, you don't have an attack to hit the Shedinja there, and as long as Poltergeist connects, you would eventually be able to knock it out.
Yeah, just doing that damage slowly or quickly. Zacian hits like a truck and is going to be enough to do the trick. Ben going to be taking this first match here in round 4.
And this is just a quintessential Ben Grissmer team, really, with the Kyurem Light and the Sableye and Shedinja all really showing very well in that matchup.
You're trying to readjust your game plan while still not having that full information that your opponent now has. At this point, Ben was able to take all the KOs, be able to get that information with this Poltergeist, and is like, okay, well, I already won. I'm already in such a great spot, and I know what I can really realistically expect.
Well, we are going to have the same lead, Sierra, here, as Shohei deciding that the turn 1 was not the problem. It was the strategies after that lead that ended up in the loss.
I mean, this is definitely a really strong restricted lead coming out from Shohei, as long as that pressure can be obtained. Last time we saw it didn't really get to because the Zacian decided to be swapping out into the Thundurus instead, and then the Kyogre instantly grappled. Whereas this time, now Ben knows, okay, well, if I hit into the Kyogre, I can still have the same impact as that game 1, but now Shohei knows that this is a line I can do. This Zacian can just fire Behemoth Blade off.
And Shohei definitely expects that his best answer to the Kyurem Light is Zacian with Behemoth Blade doing the double damage to a Dynamax Pokemon. Obviously would be very strong into Kyurem there. But the question is if Sableye will let the Zacian attack it, because if you leave yourself open here without a protect, you're probably going to have to eat a Life Orb Max Quake for your troubles there, and the Sableye is going to quash to make sure that, or it can quash, I should say, to let the Kyurem Light be able to attack before the Zacian can.
Maybe a situation of give a little, take a little, even if the Zacian is going to be on the receiving end of the Max Quake, maybe do something else. But if it is going to be on the receiving end, it will be through a protect. Fake out targeting right into that slot, which means a follow-up Max Quake might have just been headed that way. No, instead it will be into the Kyogre. It will be a kind of similar line in that sense going on into this game to make sure that this special defense boost can be gained and the Water Spout in retaliation not going to be able to do as much damage.
Yeah, just somewhat of a repeat of Game 1's turn there, where the Max Quake brought it down and the Water Spout didn't do as much damage because of it. But that protect, a very safe middle ground play that Ben made there, using Fake Out on Zacian to stop it from a Behemoth Blade if it didn't protect, but also getting the Max Quake onto Kyogre to hinder the damage output that it can have, and also hurting its Water Spout there, and giving yourself the +1 special defense, which was so critical in Game 1, because the at +2 special defense is Zacian, or excuse me, the Sableye was able to hang on from Kyogre's attack there. So now if you are Shohei, you're really in the same situation as we were talking about on turn 1. You have to worry about Quash being able to delay your attack this turn. And now that Kyurem has a special defense boost already and hardly took any damage, it's going to be hard to knock it out, and you're not even going to be able to if you just switch out Zacian.
All right, well, here's going to be a big adjustment going into the Zacian finally swapping out, but it will be into the Whimsicott instead, as a little bit of shenanigans happening with it. Maybe not wanting to go for another move, maybe misclick. Some things maybe we'll never know. Now a Max Quake fired off from Ben to get another one of these boosts, do a bit more damage, and this Water Spout's doing Pebblesworth.
Yeah, and maybe Shohei a bit wary from Game 1, where he double missed Origin Pulse when he was at half health. He's like, I'm half health. This Water Spout's not going to be effective. So now choosing to click that on this turn, you're also kind of thinking he's going to Max Quake my Zacian slot, so I might be safe. But you get punished for that decision, because now you didn't take the risk of doing more damage with Origin Pulse. So you almost essentially didn't do any damage, because of how low HP that the Kyogre is currently at.
It's doing not much. This time, no, not use fake out. Instead, it will be the ally switch to switch things around a little bit. Whimsicott joining the field is going to take this opportunity to set up the tailwind to make sure that Shohei has the speed on his side going forward into this match. A welcome change going into things, but the damage that the Kyogre wasn't able to do previously is really hurting right about now as no KOs picked up. Now a max hailstorm fired off into the Whimsicott to deal with. It does bring it down to Sash, but also going to be setting the hail.
Right, and that hail would be able to do the 1 HP remaining there. I just think it's really interesting as the Whimsicott gets knocked out that a Sableye was able to take 3 hits from a Kyogre. It's something you don't really see every day, but because of the Max Quake boost, and then actually hangs on, doesn't get knocked out from the hail. Because of those boosts and because of how low of an HP the Kyogre is at, really being a problem for Shohei in this matchup. And that was a pretty nice turn from Ben, because now you're back in that same spot. You lost Dynamax, so I don't think, even with the Life Orb, I'm not sure how the interaction is going to work with how much Earth Power does into the Zacian, but you're still worried about Quash.
Well, and the situation, too, is now Shohei does have the speed advantage on his side and hasn't used Max whatsoever. So the Whimsicott, even joining the field for only that one turn, has really left that impact, because both of these Pokemon now can go and outspeed, and Sableye can only deal with one at a time, and even the little bit of damage that's been dealt, I mean, it starts to add up.
The question is, what did Shohei bring in the back as his 4th Pokemon? If it's the Thundurus, that's a great Dynamax attacker, as we've seen so many times so far throughout the day. And the Kyurem has already used up its Dynamax turns there. So you would have that Dynamax advantage, the staggered Dynamax later on in the matchup. But if it's something like Incineroar, it might be more difficult to break through Ben's team.
The Protect from the Zacian is going to make sure the Quash does nothing. Water Spout, you know it's not really going to be doing much damage. You don't need it to. You need it to get rid of this Sableye at this point. And, you know, for the light drizzle that this Kyogre has, it is going to be enough to finally take that Pokemon out. With the Quash comes the Earth Power, and Shohei not taking any impact from Ben in that turn.
Yeah, and now the Zacian is not scared about the Quash, so Ben is going to have to bring in another Pokemon on the field here. Could be a Zacian of his own. Could also be the Ditto if you wanted to switch in.
Oh, no.
And you gain, you know, how often can you get 2 Zacians on your team? It's such a powerful Pokemon. You might want to take advantage of that while you can. But at this point, if it is something slower than the Zacian, you are now okay with, you're not worried about getting knocked out before you can Behemoth Blade into the Kyurem, excuse me. So I would say this Game 2's Dynamax didn't work as amazingly for Ben as it did in Game 1. It pretty much like won him the game for it. It was still very effective, but with Zacian, who can't Dynamax, and with Kyogre being such low HP at this point, it's really going to be up to Shohei's 4th Pokemon to be able to pull this back and force a Game 3.
Yeah, and I would have to imagine it would be that Thundurus, and making sure it's nice and safe, hidden in the back in case that Shedinja does make an appearance. Make sure that you're not stuck in a situation where the game is lost because you'd have nothing to be hitting it. So I like the fact that he's using the Pokemon that he has now to try and deal with these problem Pokemon on Ben's side. The Sableye is gone. The Kyurem still has a decent chunk of health, but I'm sure you could get rid of that pretty fast. And now, since you can't outspeed the Zacian that Ben has, it gives you a nice window of opportunity to just start dealing that damage on your own.
But let's see what happens between these 2 Zacians on the field right now, right? You never know who is going to be able to attack first. So if you waited the whole game to just avoid Quash so you could attack, and then Ben's Zacian knocks you out before you can attack again anyway, that'd be really a heartbreaking turn.
So it's actually going to be the Incineroar from Shohei joining the field, going to be bringing this Intimidate onto Ben's own Zacian. And that will be the 4th and final Pokemon at that point as Kyogre goes into the back. The Behemoth Blade fired off into the Kyurem is going to be enough to be picking up this KO.
Very fortunate for Shohei there that he was able to move first because of the Imprison.
Imprison from the Zacian, gonna make sure that any moves shared are not going to be allowed to be used going forward. And you know what moves those are? That is going to be things like this Behemoth Blade. That's going to be things like this Sacred Sword. And a 4th and final Pokemon from Ben is going to be that Urshifu.
He didn't even bring the Shedinja in Game 2. He made the adjustment with Urshifu Single Strike. I'm just over here like, Ben really risked it all on that Imprison. If he was faster, that would have been the coolest pop-off of a round 4 of Worlds I've ever seen there, but it just does not work out for him there. And you don't know if it is a speed tie or if Shohei is naturally faster than Ben there. But with Urshifu being at full HP right now, it is a fighting type that's really strong into Incineroar. You can hit it with close combat, but as we were talking about, Incineroar really is the best option for Dynamax left on Shohei's side. So if you get double HP, maybe you're able to take a close combat a little bit better there, and you can respond with Max Flare into the Zacian slot. It doesn't. It's kind of tough, but it's going to be up to Incineroar here.
The Max Incineroar coming out at the Pokemon World Championships. I mean, the Kyogre is so low. The Zacian obviously cannot go for the Dynamax. So it's the only possible target, but still always such a treat to see. Quick Attack is going to be hitting just a little bit of damage. Not that thing it can do, but look at this. This Groot Sword into the Incineroar, the super effective damage. Going to be doing absolutely nothing with the Chople Berry. Now the Max Flare into Zacian, and that is going to deal the damage that is necessary to be taking the Zacian out and bringing it just down to the Urshifu.
Everybody and their mother has run Shuka Berry Incineroar all season, and Shohei shows up to Worlds with Chople Berry.
And now this hit from the Urshifu, Ben's fallen, and the Incineroar hangs on. The final turn of Tailwind, so that will bring about the speed things that we talked about. Now the speed is even for both of these players, and Ben doesn't even get to use that to advantage now that the Zacian is taken down. That maybe is a speed tie question we'll have to resolve in Game 3, as that's exactly where we get to go.
This is so awesome, seeing how I love seeing different regions of the world interacting like this. US and Japan, the different strategies. Dynamax and Incineroar, the whole time we were thinking Sierra, maybe it was Thunderous in the back because you have Max Airstream for the Shedinja, so you'd be able to hit it, having something super effective. But he's saying, no, I'd rather the Incineroar.
This is a big adjustment. The Ditto to start off, and it's going to be in the slot right across from the Zacian. You're taking that 50-50, and that means that will be a double restricted lead for Ben with that Ditto Imposter turning into a nice strong Zacian.
Yeah, the Ditto there, you had a 1 in 6 Pokemon chance of calling the correct Pokemon to be in that slot, and Ben gets the Zacian there. This is one of the things that is so scary with Ditto teams, these super aggressive teams, is you're punishing your opponent for their own Pokemon. Now Ditto has access to Behemoth Blade. If it is holding a Choice Scarf, that would make it faster than the Zacian in a 1-to-1 matchup there. But in other matchups, it helps with Ditto because it tells you all of the moves that a Pokemon has, but with the Zacian, you're not really too concerned. Most of his moves have been revealed at this point. But with Zacian, because it's not Ditto anymore, Zacian and Kieran White on the field right now, that's a pretty strong offensive pairing for Ben.
And it's a tricky situation, right? Because normally you see the Zacian next to a Whimsicott, you're like, oh wow, a Tailwind, a Behemoth Blade, this is dangerous, this is fast, this is dangerous. It could be a sort of spot. The Ditto not wanting to stick around into the Zacian, though, instead bringing out the Sableye is this Whimsicott now also swapping out. It is going to be a turn of everyone readjusting, and it was an Incineroar potentially as a response into that impostered Ditto.
Yeah, now you have to. The only people that can move this turn are the Kyurem and the Zacian there. So if there's a Dynamax, that we see from Ben, all 3 games he decided to Dynamax the Kyurem on the first turn. Makes sense. There is no Quash. There's no Protect this turn. The Zacian is not worried about being delayed in its damage towards the Kyurem here. So that is something that can be more beneficial for Shohei.
Yeah, but also Ben being able to apply this pressure right out of the gate. We've gotten to see just how dangerous it can be. The Behemoth now from Zacian, it's all about where it's going to be targeting, just how it will fare, and it actually will be
double
into
damage.
This slot. Double damage, and double damage is going to be enough to be picking up this one-hit KO. This first turn Max is going to be the last and final turn of Max here for Ben, and that is a huge blow in this Game 3.
And think about it, 2 of the 3 Pokemon we know are Sableye and Ditto. You don't really want to Dynamax them. So if you try to save Dynamax for later, you're not going to get much value. But now you have none of it. Even if you try to save it later, you might get 1 or 2 turns. Now you get nothing there. So the Urshifu is going to have to put in a lot of work remaining in this game. And you're not even going to get to see it, because what are you going to do against the player of Zacian as Urshifu? That was 1 turn.
I have never seen a game in the Pokemon World Championships just concede after the first turn. I mean, losing that Kyurem on the very first turn, it is a pretty over situation, yes, but still seeing how that played out and how Shohei was able to take the second game to then be lended, this game 3 of opportunity where you can get that first read right is insane. But congratulations, Shohei. I mean, the first turn victory, still a victory.